is going to give us a brilliant reason why poster art is as important as fine arts.
Thank you, Rajni, and thank you, Hindu group, for inviting me here and giving this opportunity. I'm going to talk about, since this panel is about art and craft, what I'm going to talk about is something that is difficult to actually put into any fixed definition of art. I mean, most of us actually don't even call this art. I'm going to talk about popular art, or what some of us call the bazaar art. Of course, the artists who create this kind of art, for them, there is no definition, there is no distinction between a contemporary art and what some of the scholars or art historians call the popular art or calendar art. For the artist, it's just an ordinary kind of painting. This kind of art, which we see every day on the streets, which we see being used by ordinary people, most of us ignore, most of us just bypass this, and we don't really give it a serious thought. It's very recently that some scholars or art historians have started taking it seriously and started studying it. When you study this kind of art, it's something that is probably you won't even find in an art gallery or a museum or a library. It's a very transient, ephemeral kind of art. You see it one day and the next day it disappears or it transforms into something else. So I've been looking at this art, and I've been looking at the artists who produce this, and especially looking at the religious kind of iconography. And what is most important, and I'm going to talk about actually the religious faith, the pluralistic religious faith that this country has. And it's important to talk about that in today's time as we see how the fundamentalism is kind of damaging our society in a major way. So it's important to document and also highlight this kind of art form. You're all familiar with this kind of scene where a barber shop or just an ordinary street where you will see these kind of posters being put up. The poster art is put up in spaces which are the most secular spaces, I would say. And when I say secular, I don't mean non-religious. I mean secular in the sense that where you don't have, you're unbiased about someone else's religion. So these are spaces where the multi-faith kind of identities emerge, and these are places where anybody can come, anybody can revere this kind of art. So I've been documenting some of these posters. Now, we all know that the poster art was actually started more than 100 years ago by Raja Ravi Varma. He was one of the first artists in India who started doing paintings in this Western style where he used models to make portraits of people. And he was using this concept of light and shadow and the dimension, the perspective. If you look at the art which was existing before Raja Ravi Varma, it was rather flat. So this is the first time when the Western technique of painting is emerging in India. And Raja Ravi Varma was quite popular because people suddenly realized that this kind of photographic quality of art. He was a much sought after artist. A lot of people wanted to get their portraits made by him. But very soon he started doing these religious paintings. And this is the first time that Hindu gods and deities were actually portrayed in a very photographic kind of way, where human models were used to depict these kind of deities and gods. His paintings become so popular that he started this printing press in India for the first time, a color printing press, where a large number of these prints were made and distributed. And since then, almost all artists who have been doing the gods and goddesses, they have been kind of using the same style. Almost every god and goddess was painted in this kind of realistic style since then. Of course, many other printing presses and many other kind of artists in several parts of the country, like in Calcutta, in Pune, in Bombay, printing presses came up, but they followed more or less the same style. I looked at this kind of painting, which sometimes we also call bazaar art, because we have the calendars which were done in the similar style. And Bazaar Art is basically highly colorful, highly kind of attractive colors that are being used because it caters to a certain class of people. Who are the artists who've been doing this kind of art? Throughout the 20th century, there are a number of artists who've been doing most of these paintings. One of them is, for example, H.R. Raja, who's done a whole lot of paintings which were meant for calendars. And you all know that South India, especially Chennai and Sivakasi, are the centers where a lot of poster art and calendar art was produced, and even now it is produced. But these artists are coming from different parts of the country. For example, H.R. Raja comes from Meerut, a city in Uttar Pradesh. Now, I have been looking at this art form, and I've also been focusing especially on the religious art. I'm sure you all seen the Hindu gods and goddesses, but you're also familiar with a lot of Islamic art, Islamic paintings, Islamic religious art, which I've been working on and I've written about it. So I've been collecting a whole lot of these paintings. And my curiosity was that as opposed to the Hindu gods and goddesses, which you find in abundance, what do the Islamic prints signify, or what do they depict really? Because there are no gods and goddesses in Islam, obviously. And in fact, there is a whole debate. A large number of Muslims actually discourage the use of images. But despite that discouraging attitude, the number of images that you get to see are amazing. The variety of images that you get to see. Where did the Islamic images come from, and how were they printed? And I was lucky enough to find that actually Raja Ravi Varma's press was printing some Islamic images also. For example, this image that you see, this is from the early 20th century, the shrine of Kaaba. There are several other images, Islamic images, that were printed in Ravi Varma's printing press. Then, of course, many other artists, such as this painting, this has been done by artist Balakrishna. The publisher is Jyoti. I think Jyoti comes from Sivakasi. So the basic idea is to say that the Islamic images are not necessarily being made by Muslim artists or Muslim publishers. They are being done by all kinds of publishers. A Muslim artist doing a Hindu image and a Hindu artist doing the Islamic image. So that's the beauty of this industry. The audience or the buyers who are buying these images, somehow for them it doesn't really matter who is the artist or who is the publisher. For them it's just, they use it for a certain purpose. They use it to decorate their homes or to kind of venerate these images. Now, as I said, that some Muslims do discourage the use of images. For example, the figurative images, the human figure is something that is discouraged in many Muslims' homes. So you would see that some images are just about a shrine. Mecca and Medina are, of course, the central shrines. But apart from that, a lot of local shrines, local Sufi shrines, have been used in these posters. So, for instance, this shrine of Nizamuddin Dargah in Delhi, where you don't see a single human figure in it. Even though if you go to this shrine, it's always crowded. There will be devotees all around. But the artist has ensured that no human figure is made so that it doesn't sort of, hurt somebody's sensibilities. But that's not true in all images. So, for example, this image is of Baba Tajuddin from Nagpur, and there is a female devotee who's sitting next to him, and there are very interesting kind of frame that has been used in this image. On the top, you see on the top corners, there are some numbers written in Arabic or Urdu numerals. They are some kind of talisman or taweez, as we call it. These numbers you will probably find in Hindu images also, because there are similar kind of astrological calculations and designs being used. The iconography, the numbers, the mythologies, they're all so much intermingling between Hindu and Islamic images, because the artists are the same, the users are the same, the publishers are the same. So it's very interesting ecology that is developing, a kind of visual ecology that you can see. Another image, again made by Balakrishna. If you look at this closely, I'll show you a close-up of it. You see these two white doves, and there is a kind of a blood coming out of their feathers. Now, what is that? What could that signify? So it's very interesting how, symbolism has been used in these images, even though they are meant for a popular popular user. Several people have given several kind of interpretations to this. Some people say that in Christian mythology, for example, a bleeding heart, a pigeon or a dove has a certain symbol. And in Islam, they say that, there are these doves or the pigeons who are hovering around the Medina shrine. And a lot of religious poetry, Islamic poetry, talks about the doves of Medina, and some people, they are not able to visit Medina or Mecca because of the paucity of funds, so they would imagine that I'm sending a dove to Medina to take my salam or take my devotion. And sometimes this could also mean that, I'm unable to go to Medina, so I'm so grieved, I'm so pained. So in a way, this blood is coming out because of my grief of not being able to go to Medina. So very interesting symbolism, very interesting mythologies. Again, painting by Kishore. Yeah, this is a painting done by H.R. Raja. Now I will reveal to you what is the full form of H.R. It is actually Hassan Raza Raja. There is this artist called P. Sardar. P. Sardar comes from Kolhapur in Maharashtra, and he's actually a Muslim. And he was a great devotee of many Hindu deities, and he's been doing this kind of images. So the entire 20th century is actually full of such artists, and these artists we don't know. Nobody talks about them. I mean, we talk about the great contemporary artists, but nobody talks about these calendar artists who've been doing this kind of art. Again, P. Sardar has done this. A kind of a multi-faith identity that we need to have in order to, appreciate this kind of tradition, this kind of syncretic and pluralistic tradition that India has had. I'd like to end on this painting, which is again a painting of 6 major Sufis. Actually, 5 of them were from India and 1 is from Baghdad. Even though these 6 people were not contemporaries, but they are in the same silsila or order. And their painting has been done. So it's not that all Islamic art is without, without any human figure. Some of them, they do depict the human figures, and they're kind of venerated by people, they're respected by people, and there is a very interesting ecology, a visual ecology that emerges in the Bazaar Art as we see. Thank you.